you. Welcome everyone. As said, this is the Academy about surveys in waves. Let's take a short look at today's agenda. We will shortly talk about what we exactly understand surveys in waves to be. Then we have two methods in which you can do surveys in waves. The first method falls around appointments, making appointments and then resuming that survey. That is probably the method most of you will be using or are using at this moment. We will do a full demo of that method and we will talk about the pluses and minuses of that method. And we will take some questions at the end of that, and then we will do the same thing this time for method 2. Method 2 is involves around using background data to set up a new wave each time. This is the method that we think is the superior method. It is slightly more work, but it is a way more safe method to use. And the main reason why we wanted to do this demo, because this method is not very obvious from the interface that it is actually possible. Same, we will do a full demo of that method and talk about the pluses and minuses of that method. And that will be the Academy. We did it yesterday already. It took about 1 hour. So, surveys in waves. What do we understand surveys in waves to be? For a simple product placement, you visit a respondent once, you leave a product, and you revisit that same respondent 1 week or 2 weeks later to take a survey about how he liked the product. You might use a second, a third, or even a fourth wave, each time interviewing the same respondent about the same topic. What are the problems around surveys in waves? Well, you need an appointment management for those surveys in waves. You need to be able to make that appointment. The interviewer needs to be aware that appointments are made. He needs to know where he is supposed to be, what survey he is supposed to do. You need to identify the respondent when returning to the second or third wave, so you know for sure that you are talking to the same person as you did the previous waves for. And you would probably want to use information from the previous waves in the next waves. For instance, what product did you place there? What is the household like, so you know what sort of other questions you might ask, etc., etc. And you probably do not want to wait until the end of the entire survey, until you have done all waves before you start reporting on the previous wave. So you probably want to push out some reports after the end of each wave. So you need to have you need to have the download. You need to have the data for each and every wave after a wave has ended. So we will look at both methods and we will see how they score on these four, and we will take a look how easy they are to use and how reliable those two methods are. So let's start with the first one, which is the most simple one. Appointments. You set up one survey, and at one point in that survey, you say to your interviewer, now you should make an appointment. Interviewer creates an appointment in the survey. And when the appointment is due, he starts the same survey. And appointment feature will make sure that he will continue that survey at the point where that appointment was made, etc., etc., for each wave. So let's take a look how that looks in practice. So I will switch to the manager. I already have set up 3 surveys. One we will take a look at first is the appointment Wednesday. I set up a survey here, appointment queue. Let's take a look at that survey. So we'll see how that is. not load this one. I thought I did them all, but no problem. Go to Academy. Waves, appointment, and appointment queue. It's a pretty simple survey. We use two variables, rest name and version. We will see later why. There's one question where we ask the name, we save that name so we can use it later. We ask the gender, we do not use that anywhere else in the questionnaire. Then we actually ask what the household is, so we know if there is one or more persons in that household, because there is one question depending on that. We note which version of the product has been placed there, and for this demo's sake, this is where this wave ends, and we instruct the interviewer to make an appointment, and that appointment should be at least 7 days later, but no more than 10 days later. That will be the end for the first wave. Then we start the second wave, where we use the respondent name to make sure that we are talking to the correct person. And we have 4 questions depending on which version you are using. That has been left behind in the first wave. We are asking one of these questions about this version. And one more question where we simply ask if anyone else used the product, and that depends on whatever this is a single household or if there are more than one person living in this household. And that for the demo purpose will be the end of this survey. So that's the queue file. Let's set it up further. Because we want to make appointments, we need sample points with addresses. So that actually means that we need to have sample points here. There are no sample points now. I will use the NEPA tool to upload the sample points for this survey. So I select the survey, which is Appointments Wednesday. I browse to where the sample points are stored. Appointments, and we'll use the sample points here and upload them. I will set this up first, and then I will sync, and during the sync we will take a look at what the sample points exactly are. I will also upload addresses. For now that's not necessary, but to make it quicker during the interview, I will already preload those addresses. So that's it. We'll go back to the manager. Press F5 to make sure that the sample points are indeed there. I will assign one sample point to myself. Assigned inactive because I haven't synced yet. So let's go to the client. And I will sync this client, and while that is busy, let's take a look at the sample point we've uploaded. So sample point, it's a very simple sample point. We have an ID, a name, a description which simply says multiple waves target of 2 for each, and the fieldwork office is headquarters. We will use the same sample points for the next method, only with a few additions. Okay, so that's this address file, and let's take a look at the addresses as well. It's again a sample point. We connect these addresses with either sample point 1 or 3. There is an address ID, there is a detail which simply is the address, and there's an appointment date for these addresses which now is empty. We'll take a look what is in there once we made those appointments actually. Again, we will use these same addresses for method 2 as well. Okay. Let's go back to the client. And CAPI client, it's done. with the sync. So we have the appointments Wednesday, which is the survey we have assigned to this interviewer. Let's start that survey, go to the sample, and there we will see the 3 addresses we have uploaded. Start the first address. Start this interview. Okay, wave 1. That's what we want now. We will say this is Angela Merkel. Next. Female. Next. That's a couple with no kids, if I'm correctly informed. We have a version A placed here, and this is where we should make an appointment. Make an appointment here means that you need to hit the back button. We need to instruct the interviewer to hit the back button. Do that now. It will pop up a dialog. Choose for save and suspend here, and that will pop up a calendar. Now, one of the drawbacks of this method is that we can actually not restrict the interviewer from what we have told him that he should make an appointment in 7 or 10 days. He can actually choose any date here. So we are relying for the interviewer to do his work correctly and actually select a correct date. We'll do that now, the 26th. Next session step will be choose the time, say from 12 to 1, and we'll click schedule. And we have this appointment scheduled. Now let's start the next one, or at least select that next one. For demo's sake, let's say this is a refusal. We'll set that response. And then we'll start the last one. Wave 1. This time we will do it for Mark Rutte, who happens to be our Prime Minister. He's male and he's single, he really is. And really version B at his address. And again, we are at the place where we should make the appointment. So we'll do that, save and suspend. Choose the same date. Because we are using the inbuilt appointment schedule, it actually nicely shows us that we already have an appointment for this date. So I know it should not be 12 o'clock, but 11 o'clock is probably still fine. So we'll schedule it at that date. And we are done with the sample point. Let's sync it. Oh, no, not this. Sync and not settings. And let's take a look what sort of data we actually have in the manager side. So let's go to the manager, press F5, and as you can see, data has already been sunk back to us. So we know we have 1 screened out and 2 dropped outs. This is one of the drawbacks of this method, because we are not ending interviews. All the appointments we made will be here noticed as dropped outs. Which basically means that from the monitor figures we see here, we don't know if this is actually a successful interview, if this is a successful first wave, or if something else happened. And if we have multiple waves, we still have all those dropped outs there, and we don't know for which waves they are. You need to download the data to be aware of that. Let's actually do that. Let's go to the monitor page where we have the same 1 screened out, 2 dropped outs. Let's download the data and see if we have any data. After all, these are not successful interviews. These are suspended interviews. Surveys. No, sorry, start. Download. There is our download. Open it, let's look at the .dot file, and yes, the data is here. So at least we have the data for those suspended interviews. Next wave will simply be added on to the same line then. Let's take a look at the para data and where can we recognize that this is a suspended interview and reason 29, which means appointment. That is where we can tell from the para data that this is a appointment. To make it complete, let's also download the address from this survey so we can take a look how that would look, and we'll find the addresses where we have start the NEPA tool. So these are the downloaded addresses, and as you can see, we now have an appointment date for these dates, which are so-called Zulu time. They are in UST date time, and 00C simply means that this is Zulu time, and it should be on the client reconfigured to the correct local time. So that's the appointment with. Let's go back to the client and actually see what it looks like if we resume this interview. So we do appointments, we go to sample, Amsterdam Center, addresses, we see the two appointments, we can recognize them with because they have a clock symbol. Let's start the first one. Resume now. It will start at the page, the last page we've seen, which is the page where we said that you should make an interview. So we click next there, and there we are. We are in the second wave. The wave is with Angela Merkel. It is about version A. So we have all the data from the previous wave still here. Indeed, version A, we should get a question if anyone else used the product, because there is a second person living in this household. And that is the end of the second wave. Let's sync that. And let's now assume that the interviewer doing this wave gets sick now. So we actually need to reassign this to a different interviewer. So we go to the manager, we go to the interview, survey, appointments, to the sample, and for this interviewer we say we are unassigning this interviewer. To do this completely, let's sync it again, because right now we have unassigned it, but he's still active. We only get him inactive if we sync this interview once more. So truly everything is removed from the device. Which is probably already now, he's now inactive. And let's reassign this to another interviewer. Reassign it to some other guy. And go back to the client. Exit the application. And then sign in as some other guys whose username is someone else. Sign in. No. That was too quick. He needs a password. Sign in. Nothing to upload, that's correct. And what to download, it should pick up our one survey. There it is. Done. Okay, the survey is here, and we can actually see from the clock symbol that it actually knows there is an appointment on this survey, so that looks promising. We go to the sample, Amsterdam Center. Addresses, we have the correct status of all these interviews. We see that the one with Angela Merkel has been successful, the second one has been a refusal, and we see the correct appointment time in the third one. So let's start this, and there we are in the first wave, not in the second wave. What has happened? The resuming of that interview depends on what we call a so-called suspend image, which actually holds all the answers locally and then replace that suspend image and make sure that this interview starts at the place where the appointment was made. That suspend image belongs to the interviewer and it belongs to the device. So as soon as the same interviewer switches a device, that suspend image is no longer available. If another interviewer logs in the same device, that interviewer is no longer available. So by using this feature, by using the appointments, you are limiting your surveys in ways they need to be done by the same interviewer on the same device. You cannot reassign it, and nothing should happen to that device. If you somehow need to reinstall the software on that device, or you need to reset that device, you will lose the suspend image, and all your surveys will start from the first wave onwards. So that is a major drawback for this one. This is the end of this demo. So let's talk a little bit about the pluses and minuses, although we covered them. Appointment management, yeah, I think the appointment management for this method is pretty good. Identify respondents, yeah, we saw we can identify the respondents from the first wave, so that's good as well. Use information from previous waves, that is probably where this method is the most superior, because we are using the same survey. Everything that has been done in the survey before is available. Use result immediately. Yeah, if you download them, if you sync, the data is there. We also put a minus in there because, as you saw, the monitor data is actually quite useless because it does not tell you if a wave has been successful. It does not tell you for which wave it has been successful. So that's a plus minus. Quick to set up. Yeah, this certainly is quick to set up. It's quick and dirty, and it certainly is dirty. We saw that. Can this be used for a survey with many waves? We would definitely say no, you cannot use this if you have many waves for one survey, because that will mean it will take a long time. This survey needs to run for a long time, and at some time you will be forced to reassign this interview to someone else, or you will be forced to reinstall software, or you will lose the device. All those cases you will lose the suspend image and you will not be able to continue with this wave. So certainly if you have a complicated setup that requires many waves, you should not use this method. Any questions so far?
No questions have come in. Please do know if you have a question, use the chat to send your questions so we can discuss this during the session. There's a fresh question coming in, Frank. Can we do appointment automatically? For example, put status 29, suspend interview.
Yes, you can, but that will still pop up the appointment dialog. So yeah, you can at that point say 29, and that will pop up the appointment dialog. You have to be sure that when you do that via routing, the interviewer still needs to choose that he actually does this, because if you do it automatically via routing, it will fire that routing when you resume that interview. and it will make a next appointment when you are resuming so.
But the question, I think, is also because it is error prone that the interviewer needs to press the right button. So I think what the person who asked the question wants to achieve is that the interviewer would not make the mistake.
Yeah, that is certainly possible, but that interviewer then he will wind up in the dialogue again, and he needs to exit the dialogue the next time he resumes that interview.
Okay.
So you have made it less error prone, but you have shifted the error proneness to the next state.
All right, thank you for your question.
Okay, let's start with the second method then. Okay, the second method relies on what we call background data. What that address file that you have seen in the previous method, you could also sync background data back and forward to an interview. And what this method uses, we create multiple surveys. We create one survey for each wave. We stream the background data back to that address file, and then we use that address file to set up the next survey in the next wave. Appointments are handled in script. So let's look how this works in practice.
Can we pause quickly for a question?
Yeah.
The question, how will Field maintain quota checks for suspended interviews?
There are no quotas on addresses, on sample points with addresses. The answer is no. Okay, let's go to the surveys again. So we have a background for wave 1. Let's take a look at the Q file here. The Q file is a bit more complicated than the one. I used the same survey as we used in the next one, but I split that one over 2 surveys. So let's take a look at this survey. So we'll start, the first one that is different is that we are using the sample data, because this is how we connect to the background data in the address file. We simply declare them here, and if they are filled, these variables are filled with whatever the file holds for this particular respondent, and we can write back to it. So this is the first wave. We have the exact same questions as in the next wave. I even write them to the exact same positions. So we have the name again, we have the gender, the household, which version has been placed, and then we say to the interviewer that he should make an appointment, but because we are scripting this, we can actually immediately set up the date picker, and we can limit that date picker actually to the dates that this interviewer should be making an appointment, so we have more control over that. Next question, we are setting up the time. Again, because we are doing this through script, I have a little bit more control, so I can make sure that this interviewer cannot make appointments before 9 o'clock, and he cannot make appointments after 8 o'clock. Then, because we are again doing this through script, I need to place that appointment time in the format which is used by Nfield, which, as you saw in the previous address file, is UST. So I have some logic here that actually changes this CET time in UST time. That happens here, and then I make the appointment time in the format it should be, so with the date, the time, and an indication that this is Suli time. This is actually not necessary. You could leave this blank. That will still work, but it's probably best if you have changed this into Suli time to actually acknowledge in the time itself that you have already done that, so there can be no confusion Alternatively, you could also do this in the Excel file that you will have after you have downloaded this address file, and then use an Excel routine to reformat this in the format Nfield expects. I did it in the script. And then finally, not unimportant, I will leave an ID that I take from the address file, and I will put that in the data. And with this ID, I will merge all the waves into one file. Okay, so that's the Q file. Let's do the same as we did for the previous one. So we go to Excel, we go to the Nfield tool, and we say upload sampling point. We upload them in the background for wave 1. It assumes in wave. We use the sampling point for wave 1, which are exact the same sample points as we used previous. It only has another description. That is the only other thing. And we'll do the same upload addresses, and we'll upload the addresses for wave 1. We will take a look at those addresses after we are when we are syncing on the client. Now, what I could do, I could go back to the manager and do the same thing as I've done for the appointment one. I could manual assign interviewers. I will not do this for now. I will actually use the Nfield tool for that as well. Go to the Nfield tool and choose assignments, upload assignments, same survey, and I will choose assignments. We will take a look at what that Excel file looks like later. I do this so I know exactly what sort of assignments I made, and I can reuse these assignments for the second wave. Okay, take a look at the manager, press F5, and as you can see, the assignments are here. Sample point 1 has been assigned to myself, sample point 3 has been assigned to some other guy. Let's go to the client. Let's stop without saving this interview and next schedule. Let's sync. Remember, we are syncing for some other guy in this survey, so we will get sample point number 3. Let's take a look at the address file that we have uploaded. So that is this address file. It's the same address file as we used for the previous one until this point, and from that point we actually have the background data. That background data needs to be present. You need to declare this in your address file, which is why we need to upload an address file. It's simple. It's sample data, and the background data that we need is the respondent name, because we use the respondent name in the next wave. We need the version. We need the household. Would this be? Yeah, and this will be the appointment time set. And finally, the one that is already filled is the respondent ID that we place in the U file, so we can connect the same respondent all throughout the waves. So, don't need to save those changes. Let's go to the client. Yeah. It's synced, so the background wave 1 is the one we'll start. Sample. We will do the exact same interviews as we have done before. So for number 1, we will do an interview for Angela Merkel. And version R. This is where we make the appointment, and because we are using the script, we can nicely limit the choice for the interviewer to actually the date that we want to make an appointment on. So we choose the 26th again, and we do it at 12 o'clock. Next. And we're done, and he's loading the remaining addresses. So the next one, we did a refusal. Let's do that again for this one. And the last one was for Mark Rutte, who is a male, single, version B. Choose the 26th again, because we are not using the app appointment system. We actually cannot see which appointment were already made on this date. So that is something the interviewer needs to remember. 11 o'clock, next one. And we're done. Let's sync this. Okay. Take a look in the manager, F5. As you can see, we already have them, and because this is a complete interview, we actually now see, okay, we have 2 successfuls and 1 screened out. So we actually now know, okay, 2 successful interviews have been done for wave 1. Let's download the address data. That is the one that we need to set up the next wave. So we'll go to the NEPA tool. We say download addresses for this one interview indeed, and has been saved. Where we started, the tool address is 0. Let's take a look at that. And indeed, as you see, the 2 interviews we have done are here, and correctly formatted back to Zulu time. So 12 o'clock has become 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock has become 9 o'clock. So this is what we want. For now, let's say remove the ones we actually don't need because they're empty. So we remove these 3, and we remove this one because we are not resuming this interview. So we have the 2 that we need to resume. We still need this appointment date to change, because the appointment date, if it needs to be picked up by the system, that needs to be in this column, or it needs to be at least in a column with this header. So if we did multiple waves, if I did a 3rd and a 4th one, I simply copy and paste it from this to there. Because we don't do that, I can actually do like this. Come on, copy and paste the column name. Remove this column, and that's it. I will save this. Where I save the rest of the waves, that is in the wave folder, and I will have an address wave, and this is for the 2nd wave. So save, That should be it. Close this one, go back to the manager, and this time we will use the second wave survey. Q file is already here. We will take a look at Q file while we are syncing. It's a very simple Q file. For now, we will use the upload tool again to upload the same sample points. So for wave 2, we will upload a sample point belonging to wave 2. The only difference is that the description for these sample points are wave 2 instead of wave 1. For the rest, it's the same sample point. Upload complete. We will upload the address file we just created by using the address file from wave 1. So that is address file wave 2, which has our 2 appointments. Upload complete. And we will upload the same assignments as we have done for the first wave. So in principle, everything is assigned to the interviewer that actually did the first wave as well. Upload complete. Let's check that. Go to sample. Yeah. Number 3 is again assigned to some other guy. Let's go to the manager or to the client and sync this one. And while we are syncing, let's take a look at the Q file. And as I said, it's a pretty simple Q file. We again use the sample data to connect with the background data, and then we use the respondent name to make sure that we are talking to the correct person. We have a filter, which of the version should be asked, and we check whatever we need to ask if anyone else have used the product. All information coming from the first wave. And then again, we copy the respondent ID into the address file so we can actually merge this data file to the data file of the first wave. Okay. Let's start the second wave. And you could see there was a clock symbol, so it actually picked up that we had appointments. And there are the 2 addresses that we have made appointments. The times are correct, 12 and 11 o'clock. Let's start the one for Angela Merkel. And as you can see, we are starting wave 2. It knows it is about Angela Merkel. It knows it's about version A. So we will only get a question about version A. We will get a question if someone else did use the product, and that will be the end of this wave. So let's assume now, to make this complete, that we want to reassign it now. So we are unassigning this interviewer to make sure that thing is removed. We will sync this back for this interviewer. Now, so if we press F5, this interview has become inactive. I will assign it to myself now. And I will go to the client, one step back. Yes, I want to accept because I want to sign in now as myself again. Sign in. Okay, we'll download the one survey. So we'll start the second wave. I will have 2 sample points in the second wave because the one that has been assigned to me, that was done by some other guy, and the one that was assigned original to me. You will see there is a appointment, so it picked up on that one. I can go to the addresses. I can see the result of the previous appointment, which was successful, the one appointment that still needs to be continued. And if I start that one, it will actually start with the second wave. It knows it's for Mark Rutte. It knows it's about version B. So, version B, we should not get the next question because this is a single household and we don't. So, in this method, reassigning nicely works. Let's go back to the presentation. From current slide. So, short recap about the pluses and minuses of this method. Appointment management. I think it's better than in the previous method because we can actually force the interviewer to make appointments on the dates that he should be making appointments on. Identify respondent just as good as in the previous method. Use information from previous waves. Method A might be slightly better for that one because you can use all questions, and in this method you need to be sure, you need to think upfront, what information do I need in the next waves, because you need to load that in that previous wave already in the background. Use results immediately. I think this method is better because the monitor figures you see in the manager actually match the results, not only the data. Quick to set up. Well, this is where this method is clearly less than the first method. It is more time, but everything you see, everything I've done here, can be done through the API, so you can fully automate this. So that makes it plus minus. Can be used for a survey with many waves. Yeah, we would even say if you have a survey with many waves, this is the only method that is suitable for that. Questions?
Again, if you have a question, please use the chat feature to ask a question. Nothing's coming in.
Okay, nothing's coming. We will put a recording on the site, and with that recording we will also place the Q files and the Excel files that were used. So you can completely check this yourself. Okay, then thank you for joining this, and talk to you in the next academy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.